Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2017's Super Mario Odyssey, a globe-trotting, moon-collecting adventure in one of the biggest 3D Mario titles to date.
Following that is the HDR visual spectacle that highlighted a studio's transition from first-person shooters to open-world adventures. 2017's Horizon Zero Dawn. 2017 games, but if we had to be a little more specific, they are gems from 2017. Games that really stood out, but yet they were overshadowed in the awards season.
Largely by the exact same game. Though, yours more so than mine for sure.
Well, I don't know. I mean, yours was on the same system. Like, you can't even say best Nintendo Switch game of 2017, that's a shame.
Yeah, that is true. It's really funny that we planned that. I just decided I wanted to do Odyssey. There was no real reason behind it. And then you put Zero Dawn down next to it. And then I think we found out that the PC version is coming out like this week.
Yes, this week. It was very serendipitous.
It was the most called shot possible yet. So that was really cool. But we just happened to pick games from 2017, and I think this is going to be a good one.
It just worked. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I actually finished 3 games since last we spoke.
Oh.
I finished Donkey Kong 64. I shouldn't say we. Matt is still playing, but we're hoping within the next week or so to get that recorded and good and move on after we scream at each other.
Yes, for your podcast masterpieces.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird episode because I really love that game, and he does not.
Mm-hmm.
He is not having a great time. Ben and I, my roommate, we played a little co-op game that I think got overshadowed at the beginning of the year that Nintendo released, and then quarantine happened, and it was a local-only game, a local multiplayer-only game called Good Job.
Oh, yeah.
Which is about like doing a bunch of stuff with a bunch of physics objects and like completing jobs and stuff in an office environment. It's delightful. It's a lot of fun. If you have somebody to play with, I would heartily recommend it. And then lastly, last night I sat down and in one sitting played Carrion, which is the game that just came out, published by Devolver Digital, where you play as basically it is a horror game where you play as the monster.
Yeah.
And it is very fun. It has one very interesting problem that I genuinely don't understand how it happened. It is kind of a Metroidvania, and there is no map.
Oh, well.
And that's a weird choice, but hey, whatever. I still finished the game and had a good time with it.
Mm-hmm. I got the Platinum Trophy for Ghost of Tsushima. Yay. It was one of those experiences where you get the Platinum Trophy on the credits roll. And I think there are few experiences in games better. Granted, it does take some preparation to get that set up beforehand to kind of know what is still going to be checked off as you complete the main missions at the end of Act 3. Yeah, definitely end of Act 2 took a turn that I wasn't expecting fully, but that's where I was at the end of last episode. So yeah, it was a really good time. I definitely enjoyed it. Obviously, if I got enough completion done to get that Platinum Trophy on PS4. One of the harder trophies was that aforementioned Sly Cooper reference that we talked about. It took getting some different objects throughout the world, going on top of really tall buildings to find a certain item. And they're all different Sly Cooper references in a way. They're all named differently. The a headband or whatever was the crooked, some crooked charm or whatever. But it had like it's a blue band with a yellow shape of Sly's cane. And it's just like, oh, that's really neat. You have to get like the blue armor dye for like the Gosaku samurai armor so that you kind of look big and blue and yellow. It just really neat. Like there's a thief's mask. It's like all these different things. It definitely takes some looking up to really figure it out. But yeah, you have to like dress up as Sly Cooper. So we were always wondering like, oh, what's the big Easter egg? Like that's the one.
I did look it up after hearing that there was one. So yeah, it looks interesting. I still wish it was a full model swap because that would be stupid. And that's what I want from the world, but I understand why it is not.
But then you also get to jump and tightrope walk across different ropes. And it's like, oh, that's straight up Sly. You're not pressing circle to do so. But no, I had a great time with Ghost of Tsushima. I'm trying to still figure out where it is. It's near the top. I don't know if it beats The Last of Us Part 2, but it's near the top for me. So let's talk about some composer follow-up news. We've talked about different composers on this show, and they're still working on new things, still doing cool things in the video game world. Let's talk about Christopher Madigan, the Cuphead composer, who we still got to bring it up every time. That was his first video game composition project. His first composition project ever was Cuphead.
I think about that every few days. That's not a joke.
Cuphead is out now on PlayStation 4, which is interesting considering it was pretty Xbox exclusive for a while before it made its way to Switch, and now it's on PS4. But it's also coming out with a new CD music release of variant tracks from the game and also 2 never-before-released tracks. This is going to be an import from Asia. It launches in Q4 2020, but new music in a way from Christopher Madigan. So there you go.
And here we thought we were going to have to wait all the way until Delicious Next Course to get new music, which it's actually kind of weird to me that this game's coming out on PS4, but hey, more people get to play Cuphead and have the same trajectory as I did, probably, where they don't beat it.
Delicious Last Course is taking a while. Wow, that needs to come out soon.
Meanwhile, another game launching very soon is Battletoads, which will be releasing on August 20th, with music by David Housden, who we talked about for his work on Thomas Was Alone. I don't think I'll be giving this game a shot, but it is kind of neat to see the Battletoads making a comeback.
What are you talking about? You have Game Pass. You get to try it for free.
And even then, I don't think I have any interest in playing Battletoads. Gonna be real.
I'm semi-curious. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Capcom has not only been such a proponent of putting their soundtracks on Spotify for streaming, but it looks like they've added a new avenue for purchasing video game soundtracks. You can get certain soundtracks from Capcom on Steam. If you want to see if your favorite soundtrack's on there and you want to send money Capcom's way to be distributed to the composer, then by all means.
I sometimes forget that Steam has sort of doubled itself as a music purchasing site, but they have. Most of the time you could just buy soundtracks as like quote-unquote DLC for the games, but you can also just buy soundtracks by themselves. Yeah. Easy to forget that sometimes. It's neat.
Yeah.
And in non-gaming news, but weirdly enough, which this will never not be weird to say, connected to something we have talked about on the show, the Cowboy Bebop original soundtracks are now on Spotify, and they're still great.
They're so good. They're not going to be added to the big Spotify playlist for original Soundchat because we talked about that on April 1st.
That playlist is just for game music. If we for any other reason talk about non-game music, well, there are exceptions. Like the Halloween theme is on the playlist because it's in Edith Finch. But yeah, for the anime soundtracks we talked about, even if they end up on Spotify like this one did, they're not going on the playlist. Anyways, all right. I think we have beat around the bush enough. I think it's time to really start this adventure, if you would, or an Odyssey? Super Mario Odyssey, originally released on October 27th, 2017 for the Nintendo Switch. It has been so long since we talked about a game that had one release date everywhere. It is the latest entry in the 3D platforming adventures starring everyone's favorite mustachioed plumber, or some people's favorite mustachioed plumber if they aren't like me and prefer Luigi. Mario, that guy, you know him, because we talked about Mario games before. Mostly 2 3D Mario games? Have we talked about any other Mario games but these two?
Mario Land you talked about?
Yeah, I talked about Mario Land. I think that's the only 2D Mario we have talked about. And then we've talked about Mario 64 and 3D World in terms of 3D Marios, though this is closer to 64 than 3D World.
Yes.
But suffice it to say, I'm not going to explain to you how Mario plays. You know how Mario plays. Even if you don't play video games, he jumps. And you go through the world and you jump. You jump on stuff, and that's how you play Mario. He can jump, and he can walk, and he can find things, and that's the whole game. So, the story of Super Mario Odyssey is that Bowser has once again kidnapped Princess Peach. Big surprise on that. This time with the intent of forcing her to marry him. The game opens on an epic showdown as Mario attempts to rescue the princess from Bowser's airship, but he fails and falls down to the ground below as his iconic red cap is just shredded by the ship's propellers. He lands in the Cap Kingdom, where a young resident named Cappy claims that Bowser has also kidnapped his sister Tiara in order to use her as part of Peach's bridal outfit, namely the tiara. Cappy transforms into Mario's iconic hat, and the two decide to team up and chase Bowser down in a globe-trotting adventure to save their loved ones. And Cappy is actually the main thing that largely sets Odyssey apart from previous titles. Cappy can be thrown in order to bounce off of for extra air, which is really cool when you watch speedrunners do it. They have gotten so good at that. He can fly in a spiral around you to collect stuff. But his most important ability is that Cappy can capture certain enemies and objects and animals. Basically what that means is he doesn't capture them like a Pokeball, which is what that word actually means, but they wanted to do the pun. And you know what? I respect that. It actually means that Mario can possess these people. The first thing you ever do for this is you throw your hat at a frog, and now Mario is a frog. Not just a frog. Mario is that frog. And suddenly Mario has the powers of a frog. He can jump really high. You can do that to Goombas, tanks, rocks, giant slabs of meat, all sorts of things.
As long as they have hat-like objects on them, those hats can be knocked off. And Cappy is the new hat to have Mario possess them.
It's kind of bizarre, but a neat little thing that really adds some variety to the game, I think. With these powers in hand, Mario must collect power moons in order to use them as fuel for his new airship, the Odyssey. Hence where the name comes from. Also that it is an adventure around the globe, which is quite literally an Odyssey. Levels take place in the other kingdoms of the Mario world, i.e. outside of the Mushroom Kingdom, sometimes far outside of the Mushroom Kingdom, as Bowser continues stealing their treasures to use as part of his sham wedding with the help of his evil wedding planners, the Broodals. So, the plot becomes, can Mario and Cappy catch up to Bowser in time to object to this union, or will they have to forever hold their peace? This is where I'll ask, what are your experiences with Super Mario Odyssey?
Bought it at launch because that was definitely one of the big Nintendo Switch releases of 2017. Among the big Switch releases of 2017. I've beaten the game twice, though I'm not the kind to be like, I collected all the moons, or I went to the darker side of the moon. I didn't do any of that end game stuff, but it's such a fun little campaign isn't the right word, but just an adventure. Great game. Fun time. Just a delightful experience for a 3D Mario platformer.
I largely agree. I had the same exact trajectory. I tried the darker side of the moon. Didn't beat it. It's really, really hard. But yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I don't think it's higher than Mario 64 for me, or even Galaxy. I think I like Galaxy better even.
Yeah, it's close.
I like it plenty. I think it has some problems that only sort of crop up when you think about them too hard. And it's, weirdly enough, very fitting that we talk about this game when I just finished up Donkey Kong 64, because it shares some of the same issues. Not all of them, but some of the very specific issues I think it shares with that game. Being that this is a game that actively does not want you to 100% complete it. But yeah, I enjoy this game a lot. Moving around in it feels great. I kind of hope they rein things in slightly for the next one. Whenever that happens, who knows? But yeah, Super Mario Odyssey is a good game and a fantastic soundtrack with one specific song that is, let's be honest, the real reason we're all here.
It's the one.
But before we get into that, let's talk about what went into making the game. Development of Odyssey apparently began shortly after the release of Super Mario 3D World in 2013 for the Wii U. Again, if you want to learn about that game, Peter actually brought it to the show last year. Mm-hmm. It's been a real long time. But there is an episode. We have done an episode on Super Mario 3D World, which has a fantastic soundtrack and a very interesting development story. So you should go check it out.
It was episode 22 when we talked about Yakuza 0 alongside it.
That was so long ago. And also, wow, Yakuza 0 alongside that. We sure weren't doing themes back then.
But we're still trying to piece it together.
I don't know. I like those the best. The ones that are like, what is the theme for this? So it was actually developed by the same team as Mario 3D World. Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the Mario series, I'm sure we've mentioned him at least a few times at this point. He was not actually involved in any of the decision making for this game, but was approached for advice on how to implement certain things very often. They described him as, when they asked him stuff, he would offer solutions, not ultimatums. I don't know what that means, but it sounds threatening.
When he's your boss, he's gonna give you a threat. You gotta get it done.
One of the aspects of Mario that they really wanted to emphasize for Odyssey was, and I'm not 100% sure what they mean by this, the theme of surprise. And according to them, this whole theme somehow led to the discovery of the fact that throwing a hat using the Joy-Con was really satisfying. Like flicking your Joy-Con out to throw a hat in front of you felt good. And this directly led to them implementing the surprise of the capture mechanic, which, alright, there we go. That lines up at least. As well as the idea that Mario could essentially possess all sorts of creatures. And this also led to them making throwing the hat being a central mechanic of the game, because you're going to throw that hat a lot.
Did you ever play with just Joy-Cons?
No. I think I played with a Pro Controller pretty much exclusively.
So did I. Pro Controller all the way. And you can still shake the Pro Controller to do some of those special moves, so you're not missing out there. But yeah, I just wouldn't find throwing the Joy-Con super satisfying when I haven't felt the need to do that.
Well, yeah, you're not supposed to throw the Joy-Con, you throw the hat.
Well,
with
yeah.
the Joy-Con.
And then the Joy-Con goes to the TV, like the old Wii remotes. Yep.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Apparently, they also said that for this game, they wanted to try appealing to the core audience of the series, which was a departure from how the games had sort of become a lot more casual-centric. They wanted Power Moons to be less stressful to find, though, and in a way, less tied to story progression. I don't know what that means. Those are their words, not mine.
You need moons to progress through the story. What?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. that statement actually doesn't make sense, but that's what they said they wanted. So they had two main solutions to this issue. One, I think, is a pretty good solution, and the other, I think, was maybe taken a bit too far. The first one, the good one, being that they made it so that instead of taking you back to the beginning of the level every time you found a moon, much like 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy all do, it just wouldn't. You would stay there. You'd pick up the moon, and then you'd be able to pick up right where you left off. This meant that moons could be found largely in one continuous stream of exploration, which was one of their explicit goals. But their other solution was that moons are everywhere, and there are so many of them. And no, seriously, they're everywhere. They wanted players to search anything and everything for possible secrets, and I think they might have taken that a little far.
Yeah, because I think then when you think back on what they mean for not tied to story progression, like, if you really think about it, you don't have to collect too many moons for the story progression. You don't have to go too hard into it.
I don't know, I think you need like 50% of all the moons in the game to get in.
Yeah, I think it's only like in the low 200s or something like that, I think. Maybe?
I don't know how many moons are in this game. You can get 999 moons in this game because you could just go buy moons with money.
Yeah, it's high 900s for sure, at least.
There's a lot of moons in this game. There are too many moons in this game. And it kind of dilutes the feeling of getting a moon because you're getting them all the time and you desensitize yourself to the like, yeah, of getting it. Yay. So my favorite thing to learn was that the unique and varied themes of each kingdom, because every single kingdom you visit is completely different from the last. There's a desert kingdom that is like really Day of the Dead centric and themed. And there's an entire kingdom based on food and lunch where the sea is made of soup. And you have a kingdom where it's a beach kingdom, but the sea is carbonated and it's really neat. All sorts of like really unique and wacky stuff in there. And apparently this is a direct result of the fact that Odyssey actually stemmed from several, quote, eccentric prototypes. And when they started full development, they decided to try and implement each and every prototype as best they could, which resulted in a game with a dense sandbox style set of environments where players could largely go anywhere they wanted from the start. And each has its own like unique aesthetic and gameplay mechanics. And for anybody that's not like tied into game development, prototype basically means exactly what you think it means. Before you start developing a game, you prototype it out. So you go and you figure out a mechanic that you want to like, how will this work? How would we implement this in the first place? And you basically do that. Sometimes you have to do it multiple times for different mechanics before you sort of put them all together. And I find it really, really neat that that's where all of the different kingdoms came from. But one of the most impactful kingdoms for many people, and one of the first ones that they ever showed off in the game, was the realistic cityscape of New Donk City, which is a New York-based city populated by realistically proportioned human beings. This was received as well as one might hope, driving the internet into a collective existential crisis.
Mario's proportions against a real person's proportions.
Nobody knew how to react. It was weird. It's still weird. In order to anchor players to this new type of setting for Mario, the team decided to choose a familiar character to serve as the city's mayor and wound up deciding on the character of Pauline,
who is another oddly shaped figure.
Yeah, she's at least a little closer to regular people.
I mean, I guess.
She's not 2 feet tall and with the body proportions of a child. Pauline, for anybody that does not know, you kids out there, you children, Pauline was the damsel in distress that Mario, who at the time was named Jumpman, had to save in the original Donkey Kong. So she is a deep pull. And this is actually her first appearance in a mainline Super Mario game ever. Outside of the original Donkey Kong, she only ever appeared in spin-offs, and actually, until recently, was absent even from those. The first hints of Mario Odyssey were shown to the public in 2016 during the official reveal of the Switch itself, and then the game was formally announced in January of 2017. I think during a Nintendo Direct, right? Yeah. I mean, when else would it have been in January? What am I talking about?
I mean, January 2017 was the big Switch reveal event.
The game was immensely well reviewed. In fact, I actually think it might be the best reviewed game we have ever talked about on this show, because it is sitting at a Metacritic of 97.
And what could have possibly beaten that?
Who could did it actually? Now I have to look this up and make sure. Probably. No, it has the exact same Metacritic score. It's 97.
Wow. Well, still, one game trounced it over the other in awards season, at least.
Yeah, fair. But like, yeah, this for a while is probably going to be the best reviewed game we've ever talked about on this show. Like 97 is almost unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
It gained a spot on multiple publications' lists of the best games of that year. However, since release, the game has found criticism largely based around the way it handles its collectibles, being that, again, they're everywhere and you're getting them all the time. A quote that I found very telling, personally, that I think sums up what a lot of the criticisms are, and this is actually from the creator of Edith Finch, weirdly enough. I don't know why he was reviewing Mario Odyssey, but here we go. He said, quote, "My problem with Super Mario Odyssey is that it's not actually satisfying to finish. This is not to say it isn't worth playing. It absolutely is. I just don't think it's worth finishing." And while I disagree with that overall, I can definitely see where that is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Even so, the game was nominated for and won multiple awards, though often found itself competing with Nintendo's other major title of the year, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which came out near the start of the year to this one's near the end of the year. It won Best Family Game at the Game Awards, where it was also nominated for Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, Best Score/Music, Best Audio Design, and Best Action Adventure Game. And it lost 3 of those awards to Breath of the Wild, one of them to Hellblade. But I want to point real quick to the slate for Best Score in 2017, because it was Nier Automata, Cuphead, Destiny 2, Persona 5, and Breath of the Wild. That's a damn good collection of soundtracks. It lost that award to Nier. Nier won that award that year.
It just makes you realize that when we pull together our best of 2017 list, it's going to be a banger.
That's a lot of heavy hitters, man. It won Best Game Design at the Titanium Awards, Outstanding Achievement in Sound Design at DICE, and it won the BAFTAs for Family Game and Game Design. As of March 2020, Super Mario Odyssey had reached 17.41 million copies sold.
Wow.
So it did pretty good. And the soundtrack for Super Mario Odyssey was largely done by Naoto Kubo. So I wasn't able to find a huge amount on Kubo. I did find that he studied at the Berklee College of Music, and then got a job at Odyssey Gaming in 2011, but then he shortly after left to join Nintendo, where he is a relatively new figure at the company. He started there in December of 2013, which weirdly enough is actually when this game would have started development.
It's quite a title to put him on as one of the main composers, my goodness.
Well, his discography is largely Mario stuff. His very first project with the company was Captain Toad Treasure Tracker alongside Mahito Yokota, who we talked about for his work on Mario 3D World. He helped with arrangements for The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. He helped do music for Super Mario Maker alongside Koji Kondo and Asuka Hayazaki. He obviously led Super Mario Odyssey. That's the most recent thing that he has led. But he also did one remix in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and that is of Darkman Stage from Mega Man 5. So he has been put on some pretty big projects, despite the fact that he has only been working there for 7 years.
And it makes you wonder what the new Mario game is that they're working on right now. I say new, But let's be real. If they want to announce and release 3D remasters, that'd be super.
Yeah, I'd take that. Mario 64 with a real camera. So the main team behind the soundtrack of Odyssey was Naoto Kubo, Shiho Fuji, who we discussed in episode 60 for her work on Animal Crossing City Folk, and of course, Koji Kondo, who we talked about in episode 17 for his work on Super Mario 64. Mahito Yokota, who, again, has been a major part of Mario's soundtrack since Galaxy, is only credited as sound management. So I wonder what he's up to right now.
Maybe just a corporate manager kind of deal.
Maybe he got promoted. We just didn't hear about it. I found a quote by Kubo that I think really sums up this soundtrack because that's what he was trying to do. So I'm just going to read that because who better to do that than Kubo himself? This game's music has literally everything from comfortable bossa nova style music, Irish style music, to even rock songs. In order to create such a lush variation of music, live instrument recording was done in a much larger scale than before. In addition to orchestra and big bands, we also recorded a lot of instruments with strong regional flavors, from Japanese taiko, quena, to mandolin. That about sums this soundtrack up. It's very varied.
You're going around the world, you're going to have a lot of instruments, and I'm so glad so many of them were live recorded. It sounds so good.
So let's get into how that sounds then, and we're going to start with critical track number 1, Fossil Falls. This is the music for the Cascade Kingdom, which is the very first real level of the game. Yeah, the game technically starts in the Cap Kingdom, but Cascade Kingdom is the first level of Mario Odyssey. Kubo's goal for this song was apparently to give the feel of starting a new adventure, while also portraying the lush landscape full of colors that makes up the area of Fossil Falls. And to that I say, mission accomplished.
Yeah, wow. What a way to start this soundtrack, honestly. When you're talking this is the first real level, you're absolutely right. But not only is it really giving you the reins from a gameplay perspective to go on, be free, but when you hear this music, you're just like tuned in immediately that, oh, this soundtrack is something special.
Oh, yeah. If I had to describe this song in one word, it would be big. I think big really sums it up because it really does feel like the start of an epic journey, and it's just in your face, and it's loud, and it's wide, which might not make sense as a way to describe a song, but it makes sense to me. I really, really, really like this piece. It's so good, and I can never not think of possessing a T-Rex.
It's such a good moment. One of the best moments. Even in the piece where like it goes down to the flute melody and then only to bring it back up to the wide sound. It's so good. It really gets in your head.
Very, very good introduction to how Mario Odyssey is going to go. But then, we're going to take it to a bit of a different vibe. Not totally different, but I think it's kind of different. Critical track number 2 is Steam Gardens. This one was actually composed by Koji Kondo, and I think this is probably one of my favorite area themes in the game.
Yes.
It's that super catchy guitar part is a lot of fun, and like the bassist is also doing a lot of work and it's paying off. And I don't know, it comes out of left field in terms of taking place in a forest level. I'm not sure this is the song you would expect to take place in a forest level because it plays in this like big sort of garden that is being taken care of by robots, which I assume now that I say it is a Ghibli reference. And it's just this neat area. And then you have this almost spy surfer song.
Yeah, I would say surfer rock more than anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it would fit a forest area, but honestly, I think it does. It's a lot of fun. This is the one that always stuck out the most to me while I was playing. I love this song.
Oh, it's such an earworm of a melody for sure. I think it's kind of like Astrobot in a way where those forest levels are disco with that Disco Tree song. It feels like it wouldn't work, but it totally does. And it's absolutely the same thing with this surfer rock guitar going with its melody. Oh man, I love this one too. Had to be here, as is the same thing with the other songs on your list.
Yeah, this was a really easy and slam dunk Critical 5, if I must say so myself.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll get any complaints on this one.
So, speaking of, our next song on the Critical 5, Critical Track number 3 is New Donk City. What do you give to the most memorable Mario location in recent years, for better or for worse, but some really, really catchy jazz? Look, Mario should never be on a street with realistically proportioned human beings, but if he is going to be, the least you can do is put it to some very nice jazz. And I think that the vibe this song mostly gives off is like, it feels like it should be playing during a travel montage through New York City or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're getting on the subway and stuff. There's no subway in New Donk City, which feels like a missed opportunity. But I assume that vibe was the overall goal of this song in the first place, and it really, really nails it. And I really like this piece. It's very catchy and fun to listen to.
Why am I imagining something like Sex in the City? It's
a little bit.
Yeah, they're doing one of their montages. Yeah, no, this one is amazing, especially how it starts off. Like, just gets you right into it. The city opens up, the sound opens up. You've got the ambient sound, not included in the clip, obviously, but the city sound behind it. Things are bustling. It's great. Definitely one of the big standouts, especially when you visit New Donk City first and it's all dark and it's corrupted and you got that boss fight with it's a giant worm and you gotta take it down with tanks and things. And then that's the New Donk City. That's what we were introduced to Super Mario Odyssey with. Yeah, weird proportions and everything, but a sublime experience for the game.
It's also really memorable because it's one of the best examples of this game as a dynamic soundtrack, and that does not come across very well in soundtracks. That's just the nature of dynamic soundtracks. They're built to adapt for when you're playing the game. A dynamic soundtrack is, yes, I should say what that means. When you get close to different stuff in different areas, the music changes in some subtle way. And in New Donk City, at one point you have to go get a bunch of musicians, and when you walk up to those musicians, their instrument takes center stage for the song. It's really neat. I really like it. It's a lot of fun. And the reason you're getting those musicians is so you can hear the reason we're doing this game. Let's be honest. Critical track number 4, the most important song in all of Super Mario Odyssey. It is Jump Up Superstar.
Oh, we can zoom all the way to the moon from this great wide wacky world. Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah! It's time to jump up in the air, jump up, start to swirl. Don't feel enchanted, 'cause I'll be your one-up girl. So let's all check
This is the main theme of Super Mario Odyssey, and it is also the first time ever that a Mario game has had a theme song with vocals. In universe, the song is actually being sung by Pauline, whose inclusion was actually apparently the whole reason that this song got written in the first place, which is probably why it has a lot of Donkey Kong aesthetics to it. Like a lot of the instrumentation in the background and some of the sound effects mixed in are from Donkey Kong. The actual woman behind the English vocals is Pauline's in-game voice actress, Kate Higgins, while the Japanese version, the vocals are provided by Aimi Mukohara. Naoto Kubo composed the music for the song, while the Japanese lyrics were written by Nobuyoshi Suzuki. Then the lyrics after that were translated into English by Rob Turnstall, who then refined those lyrics with the help of Rob Hooray. This song was used in a majority of the game's marketing, including a Broadway-style commercial that featured live dancers performing alongside a CGI Mario, which was neat. Nintendo's goal was to create a fun jazz track that could be enjoyed outside the game, with references to the Mario franchise that could be appreciated by fans of the series. And they also wanted a chorus that was simple enough for non-English speakers to sing along to. And this is by far the standout song in Super Mario Odyssey. Like, by far. Kate Higgins kills it. The Japanese version is also very good, but I think, like, this version is so good in English. Wow. And she even performed it live at the Game Awards, and it was amazing. And, like, when she came out and started singing the song, everybody assumed it was like, oh, I wonder which game won Game of the Year. We were wrong. It was Breath of the Wild. But it was such a good moment, like such a cool moment, especially considering it came right after the same orchestra played Rivers in the Desert.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. What a good moment. And Kate Higgins, the one-time voice of Miles Tails Prower, the voice of Sakura Haruno in Naruto.
Yep.
Yeah. So interesting to hear her singing about Let's Do the Odyssey. What a song. Clearly Breath of the Wild was the award darling for Nintendo, but Jump Up Superstar was the feel-good moment of 2017 for Nintendo and gaming as a whole.
Oh yeah, the sequence where it plays is the best part of Odyssey. Bar none. It's the best part of Odyssey.
Without question.
And I just really like this song for, like, when you listen to it and you know enough about, like, Donkey Kong, for example, and you start to realize that the horn part, the dun dun da 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 dun dun da 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 da, and it's the 25M music. It's very, very, very good. I enjoy the song immensely, just like everybody else, even if I have to talk about it mere days after playing the arcade game Donkey Kong and not having a very good time with it. But we have to move on because we still have one more track to talk about. Well, we have 5 more tracks to talk about, but one more to really talk about in detail. Critical track number 5 is Break Free, Lead the Way.
So what if we live in a walled garden? As long as I've got you, then I don't care. Keep up the wall and take the plunge. Tripping through 2 dimensions. Up on the moon, we'll twirl and swoon. Just lead the way. I'll throw my hat in the ring, 'cause you're the one. Come hear the call in 3 dimensions. Follow the freak that's straight to my heart. And we'll grab the flag together. The fireworks are gonna start.
Yet another vocal song. The second vocal song to ever be in a Mario game. This time, playing in the main game's final sequence. I'll go ahead and let you find out for yourself what's happening during this sequence. I think the game's recent enough that I won't spoil it yet, and it's a cool sequence. It's a very fun sequence. Once again, vocals are by Kate Higgins and, Aimi Mukohara. And according to Nintendo, this one was actually written with roughly the same process as Jump Up Superstar. This song's not quite as fantastic as Jump Up Superstar, but it's still a fantastic song nonetheless, and really, really heavily lifted up by the sequence it's part of, while also lifting up the sequence that it's part of. It's just a really good way to end the game, basically.
Yeah, it could have been a really dramatic tension sort of music thing, but it just meant you're positively accelerating towards the end. And yeah, what a sugary, happy way to end the main game. It's great.
Yeah. Again, like, the other vocal song obviously blows this one out of the water super hard, but that's a high bar. It's an unfairly high bar. So, with that, Cutting Room Floor, you have 2 songs. What do you got? Hit me with them.
I apparently wanted to cover tracks that Shiho Fuji covered and wrote for this game. The first of which being Shiveria Town. Oh my gosh, what a light and fresh and delightful piece with the flute and fiddle going. It just feels totally perfect for a snow-filled world, filled with really fat seals who bounce around on racetracks. But it really just feels almost like straight out of Frozen, honestly. You could put this in Frozen, in Disney's 2013 movie, and be none the wiser. It would fit right in. It's so light and happy. I just kind of wanted a different sort of sound in this Critical 5. Honestly, as you said, your Critical 5 was a slam dunk. You can't mess with that, but I feel like this is such a nice one.
You accidentally picked 2 songs by the one composer that none of my Critical 5 were about, which fits perfectly.
Yeah, so it just flushes out the whole soundscape, I think. It's just a light and bouncy piece, and it's really unique.
See, for me, this gives the vibe of, like, I could see this playing in, like, a village in a Final Fantasy. Like an older school, like Final Fantasy 9, maybe.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
But again, the live performances make it so good. The fiddle especially. I mean, wow, the artistry at play there is so good. The other one on the cutting room floor for me is Ruined Dragon Battle. Again, also composed by Shiho Fuji. And I wonder if, like, Nintendo just kind of went up to her and they're like, all right, Shiho, you know how that Dark Souls game is really popular right now? Well, we want a sound that's kind of like that soundtrack, like what Sakuraba's doing. But we want it in Super Mario Odyssey. Because this dragon boss fight really comes out of nowhere in the game.
Boy, does it!
It's a hard left turn. Granted, very brief, very quick world. But it mixes things up for sure. And this piece, it still has like a Mario antagonist vibe, if that makes any sense at all. It's like got the dark melody and the dark chord progressions, but like it's so bright and powerful with the melody that's actually going. Like the instrumentation still cuts through the dark horns and the heavy theming going on. But yeah, it's like for sure if Dark Souls crossed with Mario.
I think the Ruined Kingdom is one of the biggest bummers about the game in general, because I wish it was a full world.
Yeah.
Like, I really wish it was a full world to explore and not just one boss. But yeah, this is like, it's another left turn after the already super left turn of realistically proportioned humans. And now here's a, like, real fantasy looking dragon.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. For me, I also have 2 songs. The first one being Tostarina Town. is this song so catchy? It's so catchy.
Those trumpets! Oh my god!
Like the I love this song. It's so catchy. I think it's my second favorite area song, right under Steam Gardens. It's just so good.
I think it's an important place in the game to cover, especially being the first world that you go to after Cascade Gardens. And it really does show you like how they're taking inspiration from different parts of the world. So obviously with Mario getting the option to wear a sombrero, having the Latin-inspired music is the clear choice here, and they do such a great job portraying that. I feel it's like very authentic to what they're trying to represent.
Yeah, it's a fun area, and this is a fun song to go along with it. Meanwhile, my second track is also a boss track, being Bowser Battle 2. So, like, full disclosure, in my opinion, the Bowser fights in this game are kind of weak. They're not great. They're alright, I guess. But I like this song because it feels very Galaxy-ish. Like, you can feel the galaxy coming off of this, which makes me even more surprised that Yokota apparently had nothing to do with the music on this soundtrack.
I mean, he was managing it, so probably had some say, I guess, but yeah, not with the composition. I get that. I feel that Galaxy vibe for sure. I'm with you.
Yeah, I figured we needed a Bowser fight song in here somewhere. The Bowser fights are kind of the least interesting part of Super Mario Odyssey, in my opinion. I think you covered one of the more interesting boss fights in the game. Because a lot of the boss fights are just the brutals. And they're not super fun to fight.
Those dumb rabbits.
So what will I never forget about Super Mario Odyssey? Mario 64 and even Galaxy, like I said, they're probably closer to my heart. I don't really have a place to put Sunshine because I've played maybe an hour of it ever, so I don't really feel like I can rank it. But I think the Galaxy games in Mario 64 I still rank above Odyssey, for sure. But I still really enjoyed Odyssey and my time with it. And honestly, in a few years, maybe I'll play it again. Who knows?
I feel like Super Mario Odyssey is a really good example of a Mario game to show someone who is like new to games and doesn't know much about Mario. Maybe they know like the 2D going, but to show them like what Mario is today, it's a quick enough experience. It's a fun experience. It's constantly rewarding. It gives you those good feelings. But if you go to like Sunshine or Galaxy, 64 maybe a little too bare bones, I feel like it's a perfect splash of like good visuals, great music, just really entertaining gameplay, and it's a good way to introduce people to 3D Mario games who may not necessarily be familiar with them. And it's a pretty quick game too once you're going through the campaign, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's good for what it is. I think other Mario games are a little bit more enjoyable, but I think I'd agree with that. I think this is probably the best like starting place for somebody. Because all those other games have some baggage, unless they're Mario 64, in which case it's like the most bare bones version of a thing, because it invented that thing, but you know, that kind of thing.
But I mean, yeah, we'll see, knock on wood, if we're getting a 3D remaster of it. But it is a little tough to have a newer game player like go back to 64 and be like, I know this invented a thing, but can you just appreciate it? Like, it's a little tough. We'll see if it gets spruced up at all.
Here's hoping. So, for our transition, what else was I going to find? It's a remix. It's a cover of Jump Up Superstar. And I could think of nobody better to look into and grab than the one done by Adriana Figueroa and Insane in the Rain music, because it's a jazz song with Adriana Figueroa doing the vocals. Who better to do that cover? Come on. So please enjoy that. We will be right back.
It's It's time to jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared. Just jump up and your cares will soar away. And if the dark clouds start to swirl, don't fear, don't shed a tear, 'cause I'll be your one-up girl. So let's all jump up super high.
Such a good vocalist, such a good cover. Yeah, you had to pick that one. Absolutely. Let's talk about another 2017 gem of a game that was also overlooked in awards season by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We're talking about Horizon Zero Dawn. And we can't talk about Horizon Zero Dawn without talking about Guerrilla Games. This being the Dutch game studio based out of Amsterdam. They were originally well known for the Killzone franchise. This is the trilogy of first-person shooter games that was across the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. It got remastered as a trilogy on PS3. And then Guerrilla launched the PS4 title at launch of the system, Killzone Shadowfall. It was a really gorgeous game for sure, showing off the possibilities of the PlayStation 4 at its launch, but Guerrilla wanted to work on a new game. They were kind of a little burned out on Killzone. And so they made Horizon Zero Dawn, which released on February 28th, 2017 on PlayStation 4 in North America. PAL regions got the game on March 1st, so shortly thereafter. A complete edition with all downloadable content for the game was available on December 5th, 2017, and that's now generally what is sold on PlayStation Network for the store there. But it's been out so long that Sony is starting its initiative of moving some of its first-party exclusive games to PC. And as Joe mentioned at the top of the show, Horizon Zero Dawn is launching on PC this week on August 7th, 2020. It is developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Horizon Zero Dawn is a third-person open-world action RPG. You play as this red-headed tribal girl, and you're fighting, I'll just say the common buzzword of robot dinosaurs, which is generally what you need to say to get people really interested in Horizon Zero Dawn. It's not entirely accurate, but especially when the concept of the game was out there through leaks and whatnot, and people are like, it's an open world with robot dinosaurs. And you're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. But basically, you're dealing with these mechanized animal creatures in a variety of ways. You have a bow. You're shooting different types of arrows. You're setting trip mines with wires and explosives. You also have a spear for melee attacks. And there's a whole bunch of open world things that you would expect in this kind of vegetation-filled world. You have stealth, there's looting, there's crafting based on the looting. You have different armor pieces with different abilities and defense attributes. You have experience points from all the things you do, whether it's different quests or different things that you kill. You take those experience points, you level up. There's a skill tree. You have dialogue choices. It's a lot of the same sort of things you'd expect from an open world like this. But they put different tweaks on all of these things. One of the best examples being the tower climbing, that you get to the top of the tower and you get to clear up the fog on the map in the nearby area that you're there. Well, you're climbing on these very tall giraffe-like creatures that are all mechanized, and it's almost like a puzzle to work your way up this creature. And those are the observation points of the world. It's a really, really neat open world game. In fact, it has a really neat story as well to boot. See, it's the 31st century in a world where humans live in scattered tribal-like populations that have very limited access to technology. Meanwhile, you also have these large robotic animal-like creatures roaming the lush environments of the planet, but a phenomenon known as the derangement has caused these machines to become more aggressive towards humans, with larger and deadlier machines also beginning to appear. Now you play as Aloy, a girl cast out from the Nora tribe at birth, and she's raised by a fellow outcast named Rost. while exploring the old world ruins that exist throughout this environment. She's exploring them as a child, and she discovers a focus, which is a small augmented reality device that gives her special perceptive abilities. When she gets older and cultists from a group called the Eclipse take control of these deranged machines and really start threatening Aloy's way of life, she needs to confront who she really is, where she comes from, and why she bears a strong resemblance to the old world scientist, Dr. Elizabeth Sobek. Who caused the old world to be thrown into ruin, and what is Project Zero Dawn? Who is this mysterious individual known as Silence, who is also investigating the old ones? And what is the source behind the derangement? Joe, this is where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Horizon Zero Dawn?
I, much like many other people, bought it, own it, started it, liked it, and then Breath of the Wild came out. And I haven't touched it since. It's been on my list of I should really get it back to that. And by back to that, I mean, I'll probably have to start over. It's been 3 years. But it's one of those games on my list of games that I absolutely have to get back to. But I just haven't. And Breath of the Wild is largely responsible for that.
Yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn will be forever compared to Breath of the Wild. February 28th in North America for Horizon Zero Dawn. March 3rd for Nintendo Switch and the launch of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I mean, and my goodness, this was a case where, if I remember correctly, I played Breath of the Wild first. I got Horizon Zero Dawn at launch, but I waited. Played Breath of the Wild, and I waited until a good month after I was done with Breath of the Wild to play Horizon Zero Dawn. And I think that was the best thing I could have possibly done. Because if I did what you did, I would have left Horizon Zero Dawn behind in the dust, which you shouldn't. It's a great open world game, especially for the time. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it uses so many good different gameplay mechanics at work to create this great, unique IP experience that develops an engaging story for a protagonist that you don't see that often in big AAA gaming, and it's fantastic. However, it does show some of its flaws when you compare it to a masterpiece like Breath of the Wild. The biggest example, I think, being when you're playing Horizon Zero Dawn and you're traversing the world, when you're climbing mountains and things like that, you're looking for ridges that are slightly colored yellow, and you're finding your path in a puzzle-like way up the mountain, or you're kind of railroaded down these paths to go certain ways because that's where you have to go. That's where the game dictates where you have to go. Then you go to Breath of the Wild, it's oh, you can climb everything, everywhere, at any time. I mean, not when it's raining, let's not be silly, but the difference there is staggering. And there are also a few other flaws of Horizon Zero Dawn, but that's not to say it's a fantastic game. I think it's really one of the shining examples of Sony's first-party lineup on PlayStation 4. It's great that more people get to experience it on PC, and you get all the PC options. I mean, all the settings that you get to tweak, the uncapped frame rate. I mean, have fun with that. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to look great. But for playing it in 2017, that was sublime. Just Breath of the Wild showed how you do an open world better.
Yeah, it's the most unfortunate release window they could have possibly gotten. It's not their fault. Game came out when it came out, and they couldn't have known anything about Breath of the Wild and what that was about to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the development of Horizon Zero Dawn. Development started after the completion of Killzone 3 in 2011. And it was interesting because when Guerrilla was trying to find a new concept, a new game, what to go with, the team pitched around 40 different concepts. And in fact, Horizon was pegged as the most risky project, the most risky concept for a game to go with. And yet, that's what they went with. They went to challenge themselves, breaking away from first-person shooters, going to a third-person, open-world action RPG. Once that was honed in, a team of about 10 to 20 people started making all those different kinds of prototypes for game mechanics. Once they were kind of focused, like, no, we're going to go with the Horizon project. Then about 20 different story concepts were pitched for the game. They actually got the lead writer from Fallout New Vegas to help as the game's narrative director. And ultimately, they found the one that they wanted to go with. But in the meantime, Guerrilla was working on another game in the Killzone series. And as we mentioned, that's Killzone Shadowfall, the PS4 launch title in 2013. Once that shipped, the rest of the team pivoted to Horizon. Guerrilla had to cancel even another project that they were working on to really direct full attention to the Horizon project. Overall, there was an estimated development budget of over 45 million euro. Anthropologists were even consulted during development to really highlight, when you're talking about a 31st century world, the anthropologists kind of needed to verify and authenticate that the world's decay would kind of look that way over a millennium.
That makes sense. That's neat, actually.
Yeah, and we can consult actually real world people about, are we doing this right? Yeah, oh, okay. And the result is gorgeous. Horizon is a fantastic looking game, especially its open world. And this is because it uses Guerrilla's Decima engine, which first appeared in Killzone Shadowfall and really amazed. The Horizon version of Decima is a little refined version of that. In fact, Guerrilla also allowed other Sony-related studios to use the Decima engine. For example, they let Supermassive Games use it for Until Dawn, which we've talked about on the show before. And famously, Kojima Productions used a version of the Decima engine for Death Stranding. I remember when the concept art, as well as the game's codename Horizon, when it was leaked in about September 2014. And this is where the whole robot dinosaurs in an open world thing kind of came out, and everyone's like, yeah, this sounds really cool. I hope it's real. Well, we'd have to wait about a year because Horizon Zero Dawn was revealed officially at E3 2015. Oh, that show. That show with, like, it opened with The Last Guardian. I want to say Horizon was right after. And it's like, boom, boom. And then you get Final Fantasy 15. And then you get Shenmue 3. What a open to that press conference for Sony, for sure.
All of those games came out, and most of them were good. I'll leave you to decide which one wasn't.
Most. You're right. In fact, we thought we heard, during that original trailer, like that sounds like a pretty well-known voice actor. And it turns out it would be Ashley Birch, confirmed as Aloy's voice actor in January 2017. It's not her facial likeness, though. That would be Dutch actress Hannah Hoekstra. Also, in January 2017, at that same trailer, that confirmed the inclusion of famous TV actor Lance Reddick playing the role of Silence. And he is also great in this game. Definitely a standout character, for sure. Concept art even showed Aloy as having darker brown hair originally, but I guess they went with the redhead look. And it's not too surprising when you hear recent stories about Ubisoft and hesitations about female protagonists and other sexist ways of thinking, that you'd read articles saying now there was some hesitation from Sony about how a woman would play as the lead protagonist, the only choice for the lead protagonist, and led to lots of focus testing. But, Guerrilla stuck to their guns. Sony said, okay. How'd that work out?
We also heard that with Last of Us, where there were reports where Sony was like, does Ellie have to be on the front of the box?
Mm-hmm.
Can't it just be Joel? Does she have to be front and center? And Naughty Dog was like, no, she's the main character. I don't understand where this idea came from that female lead characters don't sell. I actually don't understand it anymore. We have so much proof that's not the case.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because Horizon Zero Dawn reviewed very well with a Metacritic average of 89. It was praised by critics for its open world, story, visuals, combat, characterization, and the performance of voice actress Ashley Birch. However, the dialogue, some of the melee combat with the spear, and some character models received some criticism. I feel like it has a similar issue that about a month or so later, Mass Effect Andromeda would get crucified for being stiff dialogue conversations with non-playable characters, and especially the idea of automated animation. Granted, it created some stranger moments and more memeable moments in Mass Effect Andromeda, but let's not kid ourselves, Horizon Zero Dawn has this problem as well, just not as horrific looking at times. But it's still a fantastic game. One reviewer said, quote, "Destroying large robot beasts while frantically switching between weapons is intoxicating, but the strength of Horizon Zero Dawn is in Aloy's engaging quest to find out who she really is." I'd also like to point out, this game is still to this day one of the best examples for high dynamic range in games. The HDR capability on 4K TVs with the brighter brights and the darker darks and the fuller color palette. This game is a visual spectacle and still holds up as one of the best examples of HDR implementation. It's so good. Overall, I think the game is really a unique take on just a really good open world that's done so well. Great story, fun combat. And then Breath of the Wild's like, here's how you do this with a survival element and more character and player flexibility in how you explore this world. And it's like, oh man, yeah, that's two different approaches, and one of these changed the industry.
Yeah, again, very, very unfortunate release window.
The game got 5 nominations at the Game Awards, but 0 wins. It won the BAFTA for Best Original Property, and it had 7 other BAFTA nominations, including Best Game, Best Music, Best Narrative, Best Performer for Ashley Birch. There were 7 wins from the National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviewers, or Navigator, with 10 other nominations. It did win the Ivor Novello Award for Best Original Video Game Score, but yeah, my goodness, 2017 is debated as one of the best years for video games of all time, and it was stacked. So, as great of a game as Horizon Zero Dawn is, I feel like it was similar in a way that Spider-Man, Marvel's Spider-Man was in 2018, where great game, but overshadowed in a great year for video games and when it comes to the awards season.
Mm-hmm.
And how about that female protagonist of Aloy? How would that translate into sales? The game has sold more than 10 million copies as of February 2019. It's about to sell more. On PC with its release, it's currently the 7th best-selling PS4 game of all time at the moment. So put that argument to bed, honestly.
I don't understand where that argument even still comes from. I genuinely don't get it.
The patriarchy! As far as Horizon Zero Dawn's legacy, there is an expansion that was downloadable content for the game called The Frozen Wilds, which was released in November 2017, so just later that year. And a sequel has been announced called Horizon Forbidden West. It will apparently be released for PlayStation 5 in 2021. And my goodness, if we think Horizon Zero Dawn looked gorgeous, can't wait for Decima to run its new version of the engine on PS5 and blow us all away. The music, though, we're talking about the soundtrack for Horizon Zero Dawn on this episode, and that is because of composer Joris de Man. Joris Martin de Man was born on June 30th, 1972, in The Hague, Sweet Holland, Netherlands. He comes from a family of musicians. His father is a well-respected contemporary composer, and he was a professor at the Royal Conservatory in The Hague. His mother is a renowned harpsichordist. Joris played violin from ages 6 to 12 in an orchestra, but he thought he wasn't going to get any girls playing violin.
Ow.
So he switched to playing keyboards and drums in different bands, but he didn't consider himself a very good player. And this is when he discovered the Atari demo scene and writing video game chip music for that space. He wrote under the moniker Scavenger as part of the group Synergy. When it came to his scholastic studies, he says, quote, I later enrolled in a study of sonology at the Royal Conservatory for a year, but decided it was too high on math and too low on composition for what I needed, and started to study in music technology at the Utrecht School of Arts in Hilversum. But he dropped out of college because he wanted to work as a freelance composer writing for Philips CDI games for a friend in the Netherlands from 1991 to 92. I mean, it was exciting technology for the CD-ROM, but it wasn't a great machine and didn't have too many good games. Then he spent about 3 years working in London for the Bitmap Brothers on sound design and music composition, but he would get a little homesick, come back to the Netherlands in 1999, and eventually found work with Lost Boys Games, who would later rename themselves as Guerrilla Games. And then they worked on a few possible game projects. One of them was called Marines, which would later be rebranded as Killzone, and away you go. He says that some of his favorite games and music albums, according to an interview that was around in the mid-2000s, he noted games like the Fallout series, noting that they are wonderful games with great sound and atmosphere, though at this time it was probably referring more to Fallout and Fallout 2, more than Fallout 3, which would be a couple years later. Diablo 2, he notes that game is so addictive it should be banned, and he notes Soul Calibur 2 as one of the best fighting games ever made. I agree. We need to talk about that game on this show coming up soon. His favorite music albums that he notes for just being favorites or inspirations, he notes Depeche Mode's Songs of Faith and Devotion, Vangelis's Blade Runner, and Elliot Goldenthal's Alien 3 soundtrack. He notes for his own composition style on his website, quote, with compositions crossing many styles from glitchy electronica to orchestral sounds and hybrid acoustical minimalism, his focus has always been on strong, recognizable melodies and story-driven music that supports the emotional journey and personality of the characters it voices. And I feel like that's a really good way of describing his work for Aloy's journey in Horizon Zero Dawn, which he did win the Ivor Novello Award for, but he also won that award before for his work on Killzone 2. When it comes to composers in the game industry that he admires, he looks to Gary Scheinman, Jesper Kyd, Ian Livingstone, and Richard Jacques. You can follow Joris de Man on Twitter at Joris de Man Music.
We've done 2 of those people that he looks up to. The other 2 don't ring a bell.
Richard Jacques has done like different soundtracks here and there. We referenced him in Mass Effect. He's done some work there. And Ian Livingstone, I think, has done a lot of like the Lego games recently. I checked him out too. Like I didn't recognize the name either, but he noted Lego DC Supervillains on his website. It's like a recent game. Yeah, no, great composers. Obviously, though, we talked about Gary Scheinman for BioShock Infinite, Jesper Kyd for different games. Assassin's Creed 2 came to mind for this show. But yeah, fantastic overall. Joris de Man's discography includes the Killzone trilogy, Killzone, Killzone 2, Killzone 3. He worked on a game called N+ for Xbox Live Arcade, Velocity 2X, which is a pretty neat game for PS4 and Vita, and Vainglory, which is a mobile MOBA. Interesting to write that out. Obviously worked on Horizon Zero Dawn, and based on retweets that he's made for hype and excitement, I'm assuming he's also working on Horizon Forbidden West. He's also done some short animations and films, such as one that he noted on his website called Chuck Steel Raging Balls of Steel Justice.
Yeah, that's, calm down a little there. Just calm down a little there, title.
When it comes to notes on the Horizon Zero Dawn soundtrack, music is composed by Joris de Man. The Flight, which is the duo that's composed of Joe Henson and Alexis Smith, Niels van der Leest, and Jonathan Williams. Vocalist Julie Elvin is the primary performer that you hear on different tracks. There is also Lucas Van Tol, who is the music supervisor for the game, as well as the senior sound designer. And he really gave the composers the game design document, the pitch, so to speak, the brief, really wanting an intimate sound for the score. You could say like, oh, do like a big bombastic Hollywood kind of piece where you're these big robot dinosaurs, but it's a really smaller, intimate, more character-focused story here. And it's also all about the interplay between the tribal sounds for humans that are living on these bare bones means as like a way to restart society, as well as the mechanical sounds for these metal beasts. For the tribal theme, they experimented with bows on piano wire and these resonator guitars, layered tracks of harmonicas on top of those resonator guitars specifically, and really like playing cellos with different things like plectrums or the back of a bow, just conveying how these contemporary instruments would be played by people who didn't know how to play these instruments by this tribal society. De Man also used a contrabass flute and made synth pads from blowing on a Thai bamboo flute, noting that, quote, distant pads and ambiances and wide spread out chords seemed to work well. On the other side of things, you had circuit bent synthesizers and percussive loops really run through these impulse responses of metal and iron being beaten. And this was all devoted to making a thematic identifier for these machines based on technology and metal. So yeah, it's the interplay between the two. How do they interact in the world and how do you represent that on the soundtrack? The team also did motion capture for these in-game diegetic tribal musician performances, so that like when you're exploring these towns and there are people in-game playing music, you got to do actually performance capture for that, motion capture there. And of course, everything's done in stems based on combat to make it dynamic and all that, which is kind of required for the score. Yet a 4-hour soundtrack was released on digital platforms. So yes, these will be on our big Spotify playlist. But what does this sound like with the intimate tribal setting and the percussive metal for the beasts? Let's hear Horizon Zero Dawn's music on the Critical 5. The 5 critical tracks, starting with Aloy's theme. I mean, this is it. This is the main theme, the main leitmotif that you'll hear throughout the game to represent Aloy's journey, her struggle. It plays on the title screen, and it's a good one to just hang on the title screen, honestly, and listen. Such a beautiful piece, such a beautiful melody, and that's really with Julie Elvin's voice there. But yeah, the strings and the percussion just really give that vast rolling soundscape, the cymbals crashing. Just shows you it's a vast open world that's ready and fitting for adventure. And I feel like if there's one theme that you have to know from this game, it is this one. It's this melody.
Yeah, I'd agree. I remember this one mostly. Again, it's been 3 years since I touched Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm really sorry. I'm looking back at my shelf where I can see it from here. I'm really sorry. But I do sort of remember this song. It's this and one other that hearing them just sort of had this moment of like, oh, right, I remember this. But yeah, this one is gorgeous. I agree. Julie Elvin kills it. I don't know. I don't think there's much more to say other than it's very pretty. It's a very pretty song.
Yeah. I feel like the soundscapes that this soundtrack creates, it's just so pleasing to listen to. You're just struck by the beauty of the music and accompanied by the beauty of the world. And it creates a great experience. And why video game music is so great at amplifying the experience. It may sound great on its own, but God, trust me, with the gameplay and the visuals, just fantastic. It continues in number 2 on the Critical 5. This is Years of Training. This song is composed by The Flight, that duo of musicians there. And it's the growing up montage, specifically Aloy training over years for the proving where maybe she'll be accepted into the Nora tribe once again if she wins the contest. It's honestly one of the most memorable moments of the game because it's such a great montage. You know, you can say from movies like, oh, it's a training montage, a montage. Well, no, it's like she's jumping off as a child and like doing a duck roll as an adult and like really honing her skills while this music plays. And it's really Aloy becoming the character that you're going to primarily play as the rest of the game. Just a very memorable sequence. And so I feel like the music that plays with it, goes along with that. You even hear a little bit of Aloy's theme at the end of the clip. Of course you do. It's her theme. It's her growing up.
I think the proving just in general is a really cool sequence. Because for some reason, the one scene that strikes me the most, that comes to mind even now, despite not touching it for years, is her winning the proving. And the whole fake out they pull of the like, an exile win the proving? Never. and you're just like, oh, you're about to pull this, huh? And and then she is a brave now. It's like, and it really makes you feel a lot of it. And I think this montage really does work super hard for that feeling. I do remember this montage. I didn't fully remember the music until listening to it now, but like, I remember this montage very clearly. It's a very, very good sequence and a very good way to introduce yourself to a player character.
It's one of those moments where it feels like this is going to be a special story and a special game where like you're going as a child first and you're finding this augmented reality device and you're exploring the ruins and you go out in the world and you're seeing the path of these monsters and you got another child who's like, how are you doing that? How are you avoiding their sight? But like, it's this that really sets you into like, oh no, this is something special here for sure. Number 3 on the Critical 5. This is called Her Breath, Her Land. Other different songs on the soundtrack, you can pin it to a certain moment, a certain cutscene, whatever. This one, not so much, but I feel like this, like when you're out, like into the expanse, into the open world, like really having that freedom. And I think it's really an exploration theme, if I had to guess, especially in the early morning with the full piece. You can kind of imagine like with that sunrise coming up, because it is a day-night cycle in the world that, changes with weather and all that. But this is, again, it's just so gorgeous. And it really gives you a good feeling paired alongside the visuals of the world. You get it's like a vibraphone chime sort of here with like the string counter melody behind it. I want to say it's maybe a viola because it's higher pitched than a cello and it's too low for a violin. I think it's just ethereal to listen to and immerse yourself in this world.
I think ethereal is a very good way to put it. I don't remember hearing this in game, but this song is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's my second favorite on your Critical 5, though my favorite is actually the next one.
Let's talk about that next one. Number 4 on the 5 critical tracks is Force Multiplication. All right, now we're getting into some battle music. This plays when Aloy is fighting corruptors and deathbringers. Let's just call it what it is. These are essentially like mini boss music and boss music pieces throughout the game. And boy, does it work, because you're getting the metal machine kind of clashing here. I just love the electronic pulsing on this one. The deep string work on the, must be the stand-up bass string, like really going there, or at least cello. I mean, my goodness. But it really gets you thumping and going for a really good fight. Great battle music for this one, for sure. When you consider it's not that bombastic Hollywood score, but considering what they're going for, it works so well.
This song is super awesome. This is the other one where I heard it and was like, oh yeah, I remember this one. I remember this song. A little more vaguely than Aloy's theme, but I remember this song. And just, this is super cool. And I agree, like the mechanical aspect to it really builds up on it. This is a super good battle song.
And yet it gets even bigger because there are bigger monsters and there are bigger quests. Like what plays in number 5 on the Critical 5 here. This is Planned Obsolescence. This one is composed by The Flight, and it plays during the main quest, The Face of Extinction. Basically, the final story mission in the game. I feel like this is the most traditional video game-y track, if that makes sense. Like, it stands out a little bit compared to some of the other more intimate pieces, but then again, like, it's final boss time, essentially. You definitely get some Metal Gear vibes, and that makes sense when you're going up against the big bad machine, so to speak. It really has its distinct flair with the electronic noises and the mechanization going here. The electronic humming and noises that are kind of like infiltrating the piece. It's a good climax to the action, especially when you're facing against the big mechanical threat. But does it sound anything like Her Breath, Her Land? Absolutely not.
I agree with the Metal Gear vibes. But first of all, I just want to say Planned Obsolescence is such a good name. Oh my
yes.
God. It's so good. But yeah, I don't think I have much to add other than I think I agree this one's the most traditionally video game, but I don't think that's essentially a bad thing. I think this song is super cool, and one day I'll hear where it plays.
Absolutely. Let's get to my couple tracks here on the cutting room floor. One of these is The Good News. There's a piece called The Bad News, and that plays during the cutscene of where you hear about how the world met its ruin. It certainly did. But The Good News plays during the cutscene where you're seeing Elizabeth Sobek's presentation of Project Zero Dawn, or essentially how to bring the world back from what it was. And it's a nice piece. I love this counterplay that's going with like the deep electronic bass of like the technology that was there at the time, the technology that's playing back this hologram video, but also the playful strings here at work, where it's like there's the fascination that Aloy has watching this and learning about the world. It's just such a cool little dynamic between what's going on in the story and also the elements at play in the world.
Yeah, it's a neat string piece. It makes you think that maybe violin players did get the girls.
Well, is that coming from a point of knowledge there?
They didn't get the girls. I didn't get any girls because I play violin.
Oh, no. Number 2 on the cutting room floor. This is Homecoming. I promise Homecoming isn't a reference to like high school or anything like that. Please don't beat me up. This plays during the penultimate cutscene of Aloy journeying to Elizabeth Sobek's childhood home. And this is definitely a wistful moment in the game. I think that's an appropriate word for it, considering what all the connections are. And it's such a wonderful piece to match that emotion. Julie Elvin's voice is so good here. And it really just kind of calls back when you hear her, you think of Aloy's theme and the melody there, but it just brings a different vibe. Like it's sad in a way. And I feel like this one really stands out as like a different kind of intimate sound for like the tribal-ish music, but in a totally different emotional vibe. What will I never forget about Horizon Zero Dawn? Honestly, when you compare it against a lot of open world games, it stands up so well. Granted, some things with the character dialogue aside, it's one of the better open world game experiences for all the twists that they put on what you'd expect. Like where so much of the combat is based on bow and arrow, and the spear combat is different as opposed to like the sword. There's so many unique twists. The climbing of the big giraffe beasts as watchtowers. I mean, so many good elements at play while it's a gorgeous visual spectacle. Yes, Horizon Zero Dawn, a must play on PlayStation 4 or on PC if you must this week. But then Breath of the Wild happened. We've hit on it, but it really is the case.
Yeah, I'll get back to it one day. It is like it and Nier are the two main 2017 games that like I really gotta get. I bought both of them. They're both sitting on my shelf right now, and I just haven't played them, and I need to get back to both of them.
Yeah, I would highly recommend doing so. I feel like it's going to be a game that will definitely carry over to PlayStation 5 as, you know, forward compatible to it. Yeah, and definitely give it a try before Horizon Forbidden West comes out, because, oh boy, yeah, seeing that game be announced was one of the surest no-brainers, especially for that conference in particular. But man, oh man, that's a game to be excited for sure. It's like when a God of War 2 gets announced, right? Or I should say a sequel, Ragnarok, whatever they're going to call it, or a Spider-Man 2 to continue that story beyond what they'll offer with Miles Morales. Like, they're sure no-brainers for Sony and for PlayStation 5, but Horizon's a good one to get started for. Well, that being said, for these 2017 gems, I think a fun episode to talk about these games that we really wanted to talk about for quite some time. That'll do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's the MP3 podcast version that you really want over on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's also where Joe's other podcast, Masterpieces, is hosted. And you can find those podcasts on services all around the globe. Apple Podcast, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcasts, including on Spotify, where you can not only find the podcast feed with all our episodes and bonus tracks and whatnot, but also the big old Spotify playlist. I told you, Horizon's there. It's a first-party Nintendo game. I'm betting Super Mario Odyssey is not.
Your bet would be correct. It is not on Spotify. But yes, Horizon is there, as you mentioned.
That's a shame. But yeah, at least we get some music added to that big playlist this week. And then when you're done, you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST for feedback on how we're doing and suggestions for games that you want us to cover in the future. When it comes to bonus tracks, the best of 2018 has been recorded. It is in editing right now. We hope to get it out to you very soon, and 2017 shouldn't be too far behind it. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week's going to be a weird episode. I will be talking about Brian Gibson.
I will be talking about Atsuko Asahi. Yeah, good themes coming up in the coming weeks, but that's a weird one for sure next week. Well, to play us out, I gotta talk about a cover of Aloy's theme. It's the one from Horizon Zero Dawn, and I found a cover on YouTube from Mione. It's Mione, if you'd like to look her up. She does a great job. A neat little take on Aloy's theme. That will do it for us this week on Original Sound Chat. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.